knowing what you know about people moving around in Vancouver, switching neighborhoods, your expertise in the region, do you have some tips for people who want to invest in multiplex?
Yeah, hire a professional.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Kent with VictorEric Design+Build. Welcome to the Multiplex Shaping Vancouver series, where we invite industry experts to share their perspectives on multiplexes and the Gentle Density Initiative. Today I'm interviewing Craig Veroni. Hope you enjoy. Hey, I'm Kent. I'm with VictorEric Design+Build. We're doing a YouTube series on how multiplex is shaping Vancouver, and today I'm here with Craig Veroni. Craig, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi everyone. I'm a real estate agent in North Vancouver. I service North Shore and Greater Vancouver. I have a YouTube channel called Living in Vancouver, BC, where I get a ton of business from. Used to be an actor. I still am an actor, right. But trained professionally for 3 years at a place called Studio 58, one of the best theater training programs in the country. And fun fact, I am more famous now for my YouTube channel than I ever was as an actor. I get recognized on the street all the time from people from all parts of the world who come here and see me on the street and go, hey, I know you from your YouTube channel. So. And
maybe my question for you is, how did you go from acting to realty?
That's a great question. It was the 2008 financial crisis. We had just bought a house, and then the world went to pot.
Yeah.
And the film industry in Vancouver died. It was like a switch, an on-off switch. That switch went off, and all that business went to Toronto. And I spent the next 2 years working less than I had in my first year as an actor. Okay. Out of school. And so it was brutal. It was, you know, I was doing any other kind of job that I could to try to supplement. Finally, at one point, I realized, after having a conversation with my wife, that this isn't working and I needed to make a shift. So I brainstormed with her, and she remembered this one conversation we had decades ago, where I may have, you know, my father's an architect and into design and that sort of thing, and I've always appreciated that. And I think I mentioned to her at one point something about real estate. So she said, why don't you try that? I have a colleague with a friend who's in real estate, go chat with her. And kind of from there, just enrolled at the Sauder School of Business.
Nice. Got
my license and started in this crazy career.
Right on. And today, I mean, you're an expert through your YouTube channel in various neighborhoods around Vancouver where things are really taking shape, especially with multiplexes. So why don't we get started? What are your thoughts on the Gentle Densification initiative, especially when it comes to multiplexes in the region?
Well, my thought is it's a great idea. You know, it's been introduced in numerous cities around North America over the last few years. Victoria, Seattle, Vancouver, Minneapolis, Oregon, California, and most recently the entire province of British Columbia. So I think it's a great idea, but the reality is that in most cases, these new initiatives haven't resulted in much new homes being built at all.
Why? Why is that?
I think the reason is that most of these cities haven't addressed the broader system of regulations that are getting in the way of building new housing. So, I mean, VictorEric Design, when they're building multiplexes, things that they're looking for is the allowable FSR going to be enough for us to build this home and make a profit on it, right? No investor or developer is going to build these multiplex homes and at a loss and not make any money on it, right? The economics have to work for the developer and the investor.
Right.
I know you guys build a lot in Vancouver, so you're probably aware that if you're building a multiplex in Vancouver of 4 more units, you're required to have a density bonus zoning contribution of over $70,000 per unit. So those fees they're not small.
Yeah.
Right? And those are just the tip of the iceberg. Depending on what city you're building in, you may have to contend with parking requirements. So, for instance, if a multiplex is allowed, but the rule is that for every unit you build, you have to create 2 new parking spaces. Well, if you're building a fourplex, that could be 8 new parking spaces. And realistically, the only way to build that would be to have an underground parkade. That's ridiculously expensive on a multiplex. So I think it's important. I think they're necessary. I think more thought needs to be given as to how we can get more of these homes built faster and with less friction. So there are a lot of additional costs associated with building a multiplex that need to be taken into consideration for the economics to work, right? So I think this is an important initiative. I think it's necessary, and I think more thought needs to be given as to how can we build more of these homes faster and with less friction.
So understanding, a bit about your YouTube channel really speaks to newcomers to the city, to the region. How important are these initiatives for those folks who are just moving to Vancouver and North Van?
Well, I think more homes and more inventory is a good thing for anyone, whether you're a newcomer moving here or whether you currently live here. So I think all of this is great as long as we can build them. Canada has set aggressive immigration targets, right? And we need homes for all of those people moving here and for the people currently living here. Actually, the federal government just announced they have plans to build 3.87 million homes by 2031. How are they going to do that? They've never even come close to doing anything like that, right? I think the only way they can do it is with the help of small, medium, and large scale developers, right? Yet they've just turned around and said to these investors and developers, we're going to punish you with this new capital gains tax. And it's the exact opposite of what I think they should be doing. I think the provincial and federal governments should be incentivizing the development of these multiplexes and missing middle homes, right? They need to eliminate the red tape at the municipal level. They need to streamline and fast track applications. And I think they should figure out a way to eliminate or reduce at least all of these associated extra costs in building these multiplexes.
So what do you think about this initiative and what it means for newcomers to the country and to the city, especially in North Van?
Well, I mean, I think more inventory and more homes is a good thing, whether you're moving here or you currently live here. Right? I think it's important. Canada has set aggressive immigration targets, and we need homes for these people and for the people currently living here. The federal government just announced their plans to build 3.87 million homes by 2031. How are they going to do that? They've never come close to doing anything like that, right? I think the only way they can do it is with the help of small, medium, and large scale developers. But they just turned around and said to these developers, we're going to punish you with this capital gains tax. And I think it's the exact opposite of what they should be doing. And another question I have is, what are these homes that the government's planning on building? Is it detached homes, townhouses, or is it just rental stock? Because if that's the case, that's not what newcomers to Canada are looking for. Newcomers don't want to come here and, rent homes. People living here don't want to become a nation of renters, right? We want to have access to homes that people can afford. So I don't know what the homes they're planning on building are, but this missing middle, I don't know what kind of homes they're planning on building, but the missing middle housing is what is needed here. I think the federal and provincial governments should be incentivizing developers to build these multiplexes and missing middle homes, right?
Absolutely.
Eliminate the red tape at the municipal level, fast track and streamline the application process, and help reduce or even eliminate the extra costs it takes to building these homes. Maybe even create an incentive program. Say to developers, hey, if you build 5 multiplexes, we're going to give you a bonus for doing that. I don't know. All I know is that without the developers and investors doing the bulk of the heavy lifting, we're never going to see the volume of these types of homes being built that we actually need.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The federal government and governments around the country are raising they're sending out lofty targets to all of us developers. And at this point, it really seems unrealistic considering, like you said, the incentives aren't there and quite the opposite. The taxes, the bonus density fees, these levies are piling up and increasing the burden on developers.
One idea might be for the government to create an incentive program for developers, right? Like, let's say, hey, if you're a developer and you're going to build 5 multiplexes, we're going to give you some sort of bonus for that. I don't know. But what I do know is that without investors and developers doing the bulk of the heavy lifting, we're never going to see the volume of homes that we need being built. And that's the important thing. Actually, before we move on, I just want to do a shout out to a YouTube channel called About Here. They did a great YouTube video on this topic. And in that video, they were talking about the fact that in Victoria, earlier this year, they announced that they're allowing up to 6 units on single-family detached lots, right? But to date, do you know how many applications they've had? 3.
3 applications.
3 applications to date. So that's not the volume we need, right? I know that's Victoria, but it's probably fairly similar here in Vancouver. We need to ramp up the amount of homes being built, and we can't do that when we've got the provincial government and federal government who are both trying, we're in election cycles and everybody's doing dumb things and putting out these silly policies to appear like they're doing something about housing affordability and the housing crisis. They're fighting one another and not actually working together and working with investors, working with developers. And it's a mess.
I couldn't agree more. The government has lofty targets. Mm-hmm. They really want to see houses being built, but we're still seeing very long lead times on development because of regulations.
Yeah.
So thinking about the average person in Vancouver who might be looking to invest in a multiplex, do you see that as a good investment?
The economics on that are complex, and there are a lot of factors at play to answer that question. The short answer, I think, would be that the reality is that not all single-family properties are ideal for multiplex development. You have to be selective. I was actually in a seminar yesterday with Bill Laidler. Do you guys know Bill Laidler? Yeah, so I was in a seminar with him and he was talking about multiplexes, development and investment. He actually brought up this great stat here, and I want to just read this for you. There are 370,000 plus single-family homes in Metro Vancouver, and there were only 3,000 new single-family housing starts in 2023. So less than 1% of homes were purchased by single-family builders, right? Now, to answer your question more thoroughly, the biggest obstacle or limitation, I think, to building in Metro Vancouver is the cost of the land. I mean, the average detached home price in Vancouver or Burnaby is what, $2.5 million, right? Then you've got you've got to pay for the feasibility study, the architect's plans, the holding costs, the building costs. Like, there are so many costs associated with building a multiplex. So is it a good investment? It can be, for sure, but you need to be able to have the expertise to know what you're doing, right? The average homeowner doesn't have this expertise. So you need to hire professionals, like the VictorEric.
Yeah, thanks for
right? No, absolutely. You guys have built a lot of great, beautiful homes. And so you need to work with professionals who have expertise in construction, in design, and permitting and applications, like all of that sort of stuff. This is not something that the average homeowner can go on YouTube and build a multiplex.
As an expert on various neighborhoods in Vancouver, what neighborhoods do you see as ideal for multiplex in and around Vancouver?
Well, that's a great question, because every city is different. Every city is going to have their own rules and restrictions. Give you an example. So West Vancouver, 1.6% of properties in West Vancouver, I think, are available to be developed with this densification. 98.5% of properties in West Van are not available. North Vancouver is the same. I think, in North Van we've got what, 86% of properties that are not, they're under this restricted zone because of things like slopes, streams, other hazards and challenges, right? So that leaves what, like 14% of properties in North Van that could be developed for multiplexes. That's not a lot, right? I think Vancouver's great. Vancouver's continuing to expand its multiplex zoning and lowering restrictions. They're trying to remove barriers. But I think currently, probably Burnaby is probably the easiest place and most accessible place to build a multiplex right now.
Yeah, we're seeing some really positive changes there and really looking forward to what's coming up from the city of Burnaby, so that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Craig, knowing what you know about people moving around in Vancouver, switching neighborhoods, your expertise in the region, do you have some tips for people who want to invest in multiplex?
Yeah, hire a professional.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of factors that need to be addressed when you're trying to build a multiplex, as I mentioned earlier. And I think whether you're buying a house or selling a house, you need to work with a professional. Whether you're if you own a home and you want to build a multiplex, or you're looking for a property to build a multiplex on, you need to work with a professional. This is just not something that you can do on your own unless you have the background and expertise in those various fields. And I'm not saying that there are not those people out there, I'm sure there are, but the average homeowner probably doesn't. So I think some tips, like things that the average homeowner would need to know is, you need to know what city you want to build in, first of all, because every city has different rules. So in those cities, you need to figure out, well, what are the excluded properties? For like, if you're living in North Van and West Van, you probably didn't know that the bulk of those properties are not available to be developed, into multiplexes. So you need to be able to figure out what city you want to develop in, and then what are the rules and regulations in that particular city. As I mentioned earlier, I think Burnaby is probably the most accessible right now. Not saying that other cities won't be in the future, but right now, probably Burnaby. You need to know what the total buildable square footage is. What are the height restrictions? How many stories can you build? What else? What do you think people need to know?
Yeah, great question. Setbacks, is a lane necessary?
Yeah. Parking requirements.
Parking requirements.
Access to the parking, right? Do you need to come in from the front, from the side? If there's no lane, so what are the parking requirements for that city?
Mm-hmm. I know in Vancouver, we're restricted on floodplains, for example, so a lot of people don't know there's certain regions you can't build multiplexes. Off-site
servicing upgrades, right? So a lot of people don't understand. It's one thing to say, hey, we're going to allow for all of this densification and build these multiplexes. The flip side of that coin is all of the infrastructure needs to be upgraded in order to accommodate that extra load, right? So sewer lines, hydro, like all of those things. Well, the city's passing those costs onto the developer. They're not bearing the costs themselves. So you got to be aware of that as well. Yeah, those could be huge extra costs that people don't have in the back of their head.
Yeah, those could be massive fees tacked on for the developer, passed on to consumers. And I guess, I've learned a lot so far. I'm wondering if there's anything else you want to share about multiplexes in the region.
Well, like I said, I think they're great. I think they're necessary. More densification is necessary. you know, Eric did a great video. I was seeing the video on your YouTube channel, where he talked about, you know, why this type of housing is important and necessary, particularly here in Vancouver. Because people don't always want to live in a condo or a townhouse. People want their own piece of land where they're slightly detached from the other people around them, with a bit of a yard, where they can have family, right? Multi-generational living, I think, is really important here in North America. Other parts of the world have been doing this for far longer than we have here in North America, but it's starting to catch on here out of necessity. The economics are forcing people to consider multi-generational living. Plus, I think the diverse ethnic background that we have in Vancouver is contributing to that as well, because people are coming here from other cultures where that is the norm. Multi-generational living is the norm. So I think that's important. It's important to be able to have spaces for people where they can live together as families, right? Raise their children where they're not the only influence on those children, where you have aunts or uncles or grandparents also available. It takes a village. It takes a village to raise kids. It takes a village to house people. So I think it's important.
Absolutely, that's really well put. And yeah, besides the economics, I mean, people just want options. So yeah, it's really great to see these policies change. And I guess, you know, wrapping up here, how can we find out more about what you're up to? Can you share your socials?
Well, you can find me on YouTube at Living in Vancouver, BC, and on Instagram at Craig Veroni.
Cool, perfect, Craig. Well, thanks so much for joining today, and I really appreciate your input on this topic.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Craig Veroni. If you haven't visited his channel yet, definitely do so. There are lots of tips in there. If you want to learn more about technical regulations of multiplex, feel free to check out the multiplex webinar here. Other than that, make sure you're subscribed to our channel, because we'll be bringing more expert interviews for you from our Multiplex Shaping Vancouver series. We are VictorEric Design+Build, and we create amazing spaces.